Before we had city fire departments, fire alarms, and fire hydrants, how did people fight fires back then? What technology or tools they used? Well, there was a tool that was present in early America. This amazing tool was called the fire bucket. That's right, a bucket. Simple, often made of leather, and for centuries it stood between a city and disaster. In early America, fire was one of the greatest threats a town could face. Homes were built close together, many were wooden. Roofs were covered in shingles and thatch. Chimneys cracked, candle accidents happened often. Kitchens burned hot through long winters. A single spark carried by wind could turn an ordinary evening into disaster. And when the alarm came, there was no 911 to call, no engine roaring from a station house. The first responders were the people themselves, your neighbors. They grabbed their buckets. From the 17th century through the early 19th century, one of the most important firefighting tools in America was the leather fire bucket. Families often kept them near the front door, ready for the moment no one wanted to happen at all. Some towns required households and businesses to own them, and you could be fined. These were not ordinary household pails. Fire buckets were specially made. Many were crafted by saddlers, shoemakers, and leather workers. Thick leather was stitched into shape and then coated with wax, tallow, and painted to help resist leaks. Most held roughly between 2 to 3 gallons of water, small by modern standards, but it was enough to matter when dozens and even hundreds were moving at once. And when fire struck, the town became a well-oiled machine. Church bells rang, watchmen shouted, doors flew open, citizens rushed toward wells, ponds, rivers, rain barrels, and then they formed lines, human chains, stretching through the city as the flame ablaze, and they would fill the buckets, moved one direction, and then the empty buckets would return on the other direction, hand to hand, person to person, again and again. It was exhausting work. Smoke choked the air, embers rained down, water slushed onto clothing and cobblestones. Yet this bucket brigade system could mean the difference between losing one building or losing an entire neighborhood. Because in those days, firefighting was often less about saving the burning building or structure, it was more about stopping the spread. If enough water could slow the flames, nearby homes might survive. Families could drag valuables into the street. A city block might be saved. Even the buckets themselves tell stories. Many were painted with names, initials, family crests, dates, or numbers. In the chaos after a fire, dozens of nearly identical buckets could be scattered everywhere, and so families had to find their buckets. Markings helped owners reclaim them at a later time. Some households owned multiple buckets. Imagine it now, a cold colonial night, snow on rooftops, then smoke. A bell rings through the darkness. Candles flare in the windows. Men, women, and children rush outside. The town gathers not as spectators, but as firefighters. Every hand matters. There is many examples in history of these bucket brigades being used and purchased. At Mount Vernon, the estate of George Washington, records show that Washington purchased 6 fire buckets in 1797 from the Philadelphia leather worker. These buckets are preserved today, and they believed to hold around 2.5 to 3 gallons of water each. Washington was not alone. In towns such as Boston, Philadelphia, and New York City, organized fire companies and volunteers relied heavily on buckets, long before modern water systems transformed firefighting. Even after early hand-pumped engines appeared, buckets were still needed to supply the pumps with water. But eventually, the bucket era began to fade. Cities grew, water mains expanded, fire hydrants appeared, hoses improved, steam-powered engines brought force and speed no human chain at all could match. By the 19th century, many bucket brigades had been replaced by organized volunteer companies with newer and more efficient equipment. Yet for generations, the bucket had carried civilization through its most vulnerable years. It asked for no machinery, no fuel, no engineer, only readiness and neighbors willing to work together. That may be the most forgotten part of the story. Fire buckets were never just tools, they were proof that survival once depended on community, on whether people ran toward the danger instead of running away from it, on whether a town could become one body moving in rhythm against the flames. So the next time you see an old leather bucket in the museum, dusty and quiet behind the glass, remember what it was. It wasn't just a relic, it was a legit lifeline for people. Until next time, see you in the next video.